All right, and we're live. Hey, everybody. Thank you for watching our first episode of Mosaic Live.
Wow. I should say hi here, right? Yes, hi.
Yeah, so I'm here with Asazi. My name is Bread, and we're going to talk about the National Day of Mourning, also known as Thanksgiving.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
happy Thanksgiving, y'all. How was your Thanksgiving? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I usually am really reflective on Thanksgiving. I haven't really celebrated the holiday intentionally for years. So it is a moment for me to kind of think about the land that we're on and ending ongoing settler colonialism, to be honest with you. But I'm happy to be here to have this conversation. So I'm feeling good.
Oh, yeah. Um, we're working hard at it, we're doing our best here in Mosaic Atlanta. Just want to let people know in terms of that we have some ongoing political education uh meetings going on every month, and this month we're going to meet on December 14th at 3 p.m. to discuss the six declarations of the Lacandon Jungle, which is the manifesto of the Zapatistas, and definitely a key moment in the ongoing struggle for decolonization. Um,
Yeah, that sounds dope. Can you repeat the date for that? You said it's December what?
December 14th at 3 p.m.
Okay,
at the Corner Cup Cafe Tucker.
got it.
So yeah, come see us there. Come talk about that decolonial stuff. We're all about it, and we're definitely working on some upcoming actions to oppose the coming war in Venezuela. So that will be our next broadcast next Sunday. Hands off Venezuela. So yeah, I mean, let's just get into Thanksgiving. You mentioned, you don't celebrate it. There's I think it occupies Thanksgiving of all holidays occupies a really interesting place in American culture, right? Um,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
It's almost like un-American if you say you don't celebrate it. I can't tell you how Usually I'm a little shy about announcing that to people. You know what I mean? People look at you like
Yeah.
you're crazy. But
And I feel like it mirrors sort of the line that we walk all the time as leftists of like, you know, we want to be in some ways almost anti-American while also not necessarily giving up too much of our Americanness, to be like, we are the American people, like,
yeah, yeah. I immediately think about how I am try to remain connected to just everyday folks that I pass by, and you wanna create some sense of solidarity, right? But naming things that you're just like not a part of, kind of for some people, I think shuts down any kind of connection. That's what
yeah.
I think about. Mhm.
Yeah, it really feels like, that is a vibe I think that a lot of us navigate with our families that famously always comes to the fore at Thanksgiving.
Right,
The whole meme is like debating your racist uncle every Thanksgiving.
right.
And
Yeah,
it's like you
but I
don't want to do it in a way that is like you're being condescending, or you know, are making everybody feel like think you're better because you're poo-pooing the fun.
right.
But
Yeah, it's always interesting. I usually do like just community gatherings with friends, family, whatever, around good food. Um, but yeah, those debates can get a bit awkward at times.
yeah, and it's really
On
like a microcosm of the dynamic we're always navigating with our families in some ways, you know?
right. Tell me about it. Oh my goodness.
Like we want to
Oh my goodness.
identify with our roots and our traditions and our culture, but at the same time that is so settler colonial and we have to draw a line of like, you know, these are things about the culture we want to change and we don't accept.
Yes. And as you say that, I'm also remembering that um, there are, I wonder, or there are cultural practices that we have had historically that have been sort of co-opted too, you know? So I'm always thinking about like, how can we remember a different way to celebrate or be in connection with each other while not centering this horrible holiday?
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, um, that is what we're going to talk about. I've been doing some research and we're going to really dig into that today of like how Thanksgiving became what it is and you know, maybe what it could be. Um,
Right.
because it's definitely true that there's sort of like a maybe you could say a culture war around Thanksgiving of like um and it comes from basically like this bifurcation of like uh indigenous America and white America almost.
Mm,
But
yeah.
I'll take you through kind of how that comes out of the history. Um, do you what before I get into it, what do you know so far about the history of Thanksgiving?
Wow. I will say I don't have a sophisticated knowledge about the history. Maybe I'm a little shy, or maybe it's been a while. But I know that it is um, trying to recognize celebrating a harvest, right? Which makes me
Right.
think of um, agriculture and seasonal agricultural practices. Um, and I also think that it's a holiday that illustrates a peaceful transaction or tries to illustrate a peaceful transaction between indigenous folks and settlers, you know,
Hmm.
sort of covering up the violence of it all and the ongoing violence of settler colonialism today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge part of it and a huge part of this dynamic that I mentioned. Um, yeah, you said it pretty well. There's these two things where like on the one hand, the holiday has its roots originally in English harvest festivals, which uh, existed before colonialism, you know, and sort of evolved out of pagan harvest festivals that were Christianized. Um,
Mm,
and that was just celebrating like the seasons, you know, the food is ready and we're all gonna eat it and feast now. Um, this would also even have kind of a subversive context when it came to like, you know, feudalism where they had to actually hand over their harvest physically to a lord. So like if you could feast as much as you can of it right after you get it before you have to hand it over, that's almost like, you know, the peasants get to steal
mhm.
back a little bit of their product, their joy from the lords.
Okay.
But
Okay. That's a bit new for me.
yeah, but you know, when it the other thing you're describing, this like kind of whitewash narrative of the pilgrims and the Native Americans just getting along. Um, that is a key part of what the national holiday is today, and it's also a key part of the reason by the creation of a national day of mourning. So the narrative that you're talking about that I definitely was given a lot in school um, is a telling of a harvest feast that happened in 1621 between the
Mm.
English settlers and the Wampanoag. Um, and uh, yeah, we definitely, the story is that we're told in school is like the pilgrims came over and they couldn't really survive because they didn't know the indigenous ways of getting food. And so the indigenous people shared food with them, shared techniques, and they all shared food together and, made peace. So um, that obviously obscures the like violent uh, dispossession of indigenous people. And we'll get to that when people start making those critiques. But this idea of 1621, the Mayflower Pilgrims and the uh, Native Americans peacefully, convening, it was actually established in the narrative in 1863 by Abraham Lincoln. So
Mm.
before before we had this peaceful whitewashed story of the Pilgrims, the first actual Thanksgiving that was declared by like the government in America, and this is the colonial government, like before the U.S. exists.
Right.
1631. All right, the governor uh, of Massachusetts declared Thanksgiving in order to celebrate a massacre of over 300 um, people of the Pequot tribe. So that's where
Mm.
the idea comes from that like Thanksgiving is celebrating a massacre. The original government sponsored celebration of Thanksgiving was celebrating the 1631 Pequot massacre. It
Got
was
it. It
yeah, it
was
was
a,
a
you're saying that it was a celebration and not like a just a cover up of the massacre?
well, I'm saying that the cover up is basically like for Abraham Lincoln in 1863 to say, we're going to retell the story according to this 1621 narrative, that's the cover up,
Okay.
right?
Right.
That's Abraham Lincoln was a moderate Republican. He was the one who he got elected because like he wanted to smooth things over with the Civil War and try to avoid the Civil War pretty much.
Hmm.
And part of that was what like the Thanksgiving was part of that. It was 1863 while the Civil War was already going on, and he wanted a
Hmm.
something that all Americans could sort of unite around,
Right. Got it. That's what I was thinking of. Uniting the country.
uniting the
Yeah.
North and the South of like mostly white people, like
Mm.
not obviously not
Right.
considering um uniting the indigenous people. Uh, well, I
Hmm.
guess it is. I mean, I guess that is also sort of the point of the narrative of showing like, okay, they're all together, you know, but it does sidestep the conversation that we have to have around that whole time period and location was
Hmm.
a time when the indigenous people were being violently dispossessed. And that is the origin of
Hmm.
Thanksgiving as a government sponsored celebration.
Hmm. Right. And I'm imagining that even people in other parts of the country outside of Massachusetts who didn't hear about the massacre um, were even more easily coerced into celebrating this holiday. Or maybe they didn't. They might not have known the severity of the conflict. I guess you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I think looking back now,
I,
knowing the like crazy losses and casualties, uh, that happened, like it's a little different than being at the time, like where this is a real, you know, threat for you. Like you could wind up in these battles, there's probably a lot more animosity of like, oh man, you know, I really hate these guys. They killed my goat, last year.
mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, doubtlessly, probably not a lot of indigenous people were involved in this whole idea in 1863 of okay, Thanksgiving is now a national holiday, and it is about the 1621 feast where uh, the Puritans and the Wampanoag developed an alliance against other
Mhm.
tribes that they wanted to conquer, right? Like we kind of leave that out too. It's like even in the good story, it's not just about brotherly love. It's a diplomatic uh alliance making thing.
Mhm. Can you repeat the years of the feast, that first initial feast
Yeah.
between?
Yeah,
Yeah, repeat the year.
so the feast with the Wampanoag that features in the official main story happened in 1620.
Okay, 1621. Okay, got it.
Yes.
And
Um
the the massacre.
1631, yeah, 1631 was the year of the massacre of over 300, some say over 500 Pequot men, women, and children, and that is what was celebrated by the earliest state-sponsored Thanksgiving in America, by the Massachusetts governor, colonial governor.
Which was in 1863. Did you
No, no,
say?
no.
Is there an
That's
18?
1631. 1631. So
1631.
what happens in
Got it.
1863 is the Civil War is going on, and Abraham Lincoln creates the modern Thanksgiving as a federal holiday to try
Okay,
and create a narrative of Americanism that unites North and South.
right. And forgets the massacre. Got it. Or
Yes.
erases that history. Right. Yeah.
Yes, in fact,
Got
this
it.
is
Got it.
the
Okay.
same year that like some of the worst massacres are happening, right? Um, uh, the Sand Creek massacre happens around that time, and
Right.
uh, so under Abraham Lincoln in 1864, um, there's this huge massacre of Cheyenne and Arapaho people out west. It was
Okay.
called the Sand Creek Massacre. So um, things like that are, you know, like the Sand Creek Massacre and all the various violent parts of the story that both disrupt the Americanist narrative and um, um, kind of beg the need for some kind of justice, These are what
Mhm.
American Indian activists start pointing to in the 1970s and late 1960s when the idea comes around for the National Day of Mourning. Um, so
Right. Okay.
it's 1969, you know, the American Indian movement is getting really big. And I've actually been lucky enough to meet some guys from the American Indian movement. And
Okay.
quick note on language is that like they told me, a lot of indigenous people don't like to be called Indian, right? Because they're not from India, it was a mistake. But the American Indian
Right.
movement guys are very intentional about calling themselves Indian. And it's interesting because their reasoning behind it is like, um, you know, they basically said, we're not really American either, or we're not, you know, they told me if you're born in America, we see you as Native American, but we're American Indian because, you know, before, and that's what they're saying. I'm not, but, you know, before
Yeah.
the whole American Indian identity existed, you know, before colonialism, there was no uh, pan Indian identity. It was all different
Right.
tribes. And so that's their idea behind it, is that like they became American Indians sort of as a category because of colonialism, and
Hmm.
and saying American Indian is what they prefer because it sort of immortalizes the mistake that Columbus made.
Hmm.
It's like he was
Yeah.
wrong, and we're going to kind of keep remembering that rather than keep changing it because it's a label that was sort of
Right.
put on from outside anyway.
Right. Yeah. And it has me thinking about how um, the term Indian within at least a settler colonial agenda um, illustrates a threat to the land, right? Which is a myth, right? That the well, a threat to the the land for settler colonialism. I'll say, right?
Hmm.
So the U.S. government, would recognize if you were to say, "Oh, these are Indians." I mean, what's the narrative that comes to mind? It's maybe a threat to turning these lands into property.
Hmm.
And so when I hear indigenous folks claiming Indian, it reminds me that some might really want to remain a threat to
Hmm.
the U.S. state. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I could be wrong with that. So
Well,
I'm immediately thinking of the group Indian Collective, which you might have heard of too, huh?
yeah. Yeah.
Indian, yeah.
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, another thing to consider is that like I'm talking about guys who were in it and were telling me about it like today, making a very intentional choice to use those words. But
Sure.
it's also worth considering that like back then in the 1970s, that just was the common terminology, and like Native American was a new thing, and so it was kind of just the default of what they would call themselves.
Right, right.
But yeah, it's around this time, like the same time as the hippie movement, the Black Liberation movement, the movement against the war in Vietnam are like all kind of kicking into gear. You have the American Indian movement forming and pushing for sovereignty for indigenous communities and for land back. And so one of the really famous important um, actions that they did in regards to that was the occupation of Alcatraz Island. In 1969, um, a bunch of American Indian movement members went to the prison island of Alcatraz off of California and pretty much took it over as a protest occupation to demand that the island be returned to the indigenous people of California. Um,
Mhm.
and uh, you know, it was not in the end. The government still uses it as a prison, but well, I may be wrong about that. It might be more of a tourist attraction now. But either way, um, it was a pivotal moment in like bringing these kind of issues to the national consciousness. Because once they did that, like there was no ignoring it. It was all over the news. Um, and the next year, 1970, is when the National Day of Mourning kind of becomes a thing. So the way that that happens is that there's this guy, um, Frank Wamsutta Jones, and he is he's an indigenous Wampanoag person. So he's related to the people who feasted with the Pilgrims back in 1621. And
Okay.
um, because of this, he was asked to speak at a Thanksgiving celebration. Um, I think it's like the state Thanksgiving Day celebration of Massachusetts on the 350th anniversary of the Mayflower. All right. Uh, he
Mm,
gets there.
mm,
He presents his speech that talks about, the bloody displacement of his people through colonialism, and um, he was told, I'm going to quote here from a state representative. They told him, "The theme of the anniversary celebration is brotherhood, and anything inflammatory would have been out of place."
wow.
So they rescinded his invitation, and instead of giving up, he got with the American Indian movement and gave his speech separate from the state celebration in a big uh, protest with hundreds of indigenous people who came from all over the country for this, and they declared the National Day of Mourning. Um, and it's still celebrated, or if maybe celebrated is the wrong word, but it's still honored as like a reminder of all those things.
Yeah.
But that was a pretty baller
Yeah.
moment of basically saying, okay, y'all aren't gonna let me speak. Well, you're also not gonna stop me. And
Right.
I'm actually gonna speak way louder and reach way more people than you, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
Because we don't remember the name of the Massachusetts state governor at the time, and I'm not gonna look it up for y'all. Like, it doesn't matter to the story
Right.
as much.
Right. Right. Did you notice any acknowledgement of a National Day of Mourning in and around Atlanta, which is
Um,
really Muskogee Creek lands?
this year I have not. This year I have not. Um, I know that there are, the First Nations, or maybe it's called First Voices Festival, is coming up in 5 Points, to celebrate Indigenous culture, and that's like,
Yes, I think I saw that.
yeah, that will be cool. We would love to have, you know, some sort of thing, maybe next time or on Indigenous Peoples Day, which is our reworking of like Columbus Day.
Right.
Um, yeah, it would have been great to get one of our Indigenous comrades on the show today, but it was just a little too short notice, I think. Um,
Mm, mhm.
uh, but listeners, if you guys, you know, uh, if you know you're from an indigenous tribe, or that's in this case, or you have some other perspective that uh is really interesting to what we're talking about, we would love to have you on, so just reach out. Well,
I'm also
Al,
thinking about
go ahead.
oh yeah, I was just thinking about folks in the country from other countries who celebrate Thanksgiving to feel more American or to feel like, that they're not from that they're American. Um, and just from this whole conversation, it's just reminding me how Thanksgiving has just been um, the quintessential kind of American holiday, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
But
there's
yeah.
like I think there is a weird kind of, I mean, America is a sick country, right? I think there's a sort of sick beauty in that, that it's like, the same holiday where we kind of connect over common identity. We're also sort of forced to reckon with the legacy of colonialism. Like,
Hmm.
um, I, you know,
Or forced to forget that it's a thing, with this.
well, they can't force us to do that, actually. I mean, we need to be the ones, I think, to remind everyone.
Hmm. Yeah.
And just to wrap up the story, in addition to National Day of Mourning, another take on it from the indigenous rights movement is Unthanksgiving Day. So, Unthanksgiving Day is a yearly celebration of that um, occupation of Alcatraz, which I think happened during Thanksgiving. Um, yeah, so it began over a period that overlapped Thanksgiving, and it went on for over a year. So
Okay.
in 1975, they decided to commemorate the beginning of that occupation in 1969 with Unthanksgiving Day, which is also called the Indigenous Peoples Sunrise Ceremony.
Hmm. Nice.
Yeah. We can maybe think of it as like a East Coast, West Coast thing. Like they both came around the same time. They're both kind of alternate tanks on Thanksgiving from an indigenous perspective, but on Thanksgiving Day is the one from San Francisco, and National Mourning Day is the Massachusetts version.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, it's good
Either,
to hear that even like these multiple um, different terms are um, help strengthening a critique of Thanksgiving. Even though it's
yeah,
like you just said, it's the East West Coast kind of difference. I wish the Midwest had something,
right,
and
right.
the Southeast, the more the merrier,
Yeah,
But yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I think, it's it's not necessarily settled like what place Thanksgiving should have in our culture. And, definitely we all have a role around the Thanksgiving table to kind of push it in a more decolonial direction. But uh I think it's, people ultimately aren't gonna stop celebrating Thanksgiving. I think, you know, if Thanksgiving is, the sort of bad conservative default that we start with, and we have kind of this mirror of it that's like a critique, I think eventually we are going to see them blend back together into something where it's like we can do some of the nice things and also make sure that we're spending some time honoring, um, all those people who died to colonialism and just the memory of, you know, what happened and continues to happen.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole like history part for you. So, I mean, I think it's fun to get into what that looks like at our Thanksgiving tables. I mean, um, I don't really have the super racist uncle to debate. I don't know about you.
Well, I don't have, and by the way, I'm black, right?
Right.
Though there are, still racist people that come about, I suppose. But my family is very Christian, and um, when I say very Christian, I also mean, I guess, conservative.
Yeah.
Um, and so they're all about celebrating Thanksgiving. And I don't think, I think we're, in my family, we're kind of encouraged not to have uncomfortable conversations,
Right.
So that's what I mean. Like um, to forget about colonialism, right? To not, in some spaces, very Americanized spaces, you're encouraged to forget, or just to not know about the real history of this country's violence.
Yeah.
Um, and many members of my family are part of the military.
Okay.
Um,
My family is
so
like, sorry, go ahead.
if we're ever talking about violence, it's usually, Americans are, as my late mom would say, we do so much good around the world.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole,
But
yeah.
that's the narrative that she grew up with, uh, so yeah. I
My
will
fam,
say that I'll say this last thing. I tend to struggle entering difficult conversations with people beyond even my family where I'm not too sure about their mental state.
yeah. That can be
So yeah,
hard. Yeah. You don't know what's going on with somebody where, that's a whole context that affects how they respond to whatever you say. I
yeah,
mean, my family would mostly consider themselves conservative, but they're mostly like the coolest sort. Like they're like the libertarian kind. Even the military members in my family are relatively critical about like foreign policy and stuff. But I definitely relate to like the whole feeling of like they just want to avoid the whole thing. Like they totally see me as
yeah.
someone who is intense and who is bringing this stuff and they don't want to deal with it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and I try to navigate that in a way where it's like you do have to kind of bite your tongue sometimes when, you know, uh, at moments where if you said it, you would screw up the vibe. But
yeah. One
I'm
tactic
waiting
that
for
I've
those.
used,
I'm always like waiting for those calculated moments where I can actually get away with, you know, saying something that speaks to that without, y- you know,
right,
that feels relevant, feels approachable for people.
right. Same here. Like I am not the kind of organizer that intends to come into a space to radicalize everybody there.
Right.
But I do look for opportunity um, to transform the connection that I might have with a family member or a friend or whatever. So where they're not just seeing me as the silent or apolitical person, but they understand that I hold these kind of radical politics, and therefore their image of me or how they see me does change. But I don't. I'm not. I don't know if force, but I don't. I guess I don't like to feel like I'm forcing someone to adopt my own thinking. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Or even to like listen
but
to you, you know? It's, you know, it's
repeat
like,
that.
or even to like listen to you, you know? It's like there's this balance. It's like you don't want to impose on people too much, but at the same time it's so frustrating for somebody to be like, "Oh, I don't care, this doesn't affect me." And it does. It affects you and me so much. And like as your family, I'm like, please acknowledge that.
Yeah. Yes. One tactic that I will use is if I come across an article that I feel like might be accessible, I'll share it. Or if something comes up in the news where I know a family member, if something comes up in the news related to like a celebrity that a family member of mine might love, that I
Yeah, or
think could
just something they're
spark some kind
passionate
of
about.
critical conversation, I'll try to, use that. Um, but yeah, I think I'm trying to think. You asked me like about, or you were speaking of like say the racist uncle, or the difficult family member
Yeah,
that's usually at the holiday table.
yeah.
And
I've got family members who will like try to like they'll make really racist jokes, but they're just trying to be funny, you know, they're not trying to they don't have a racist agenda. Like
yeah, my family is so prim and proper. Like even if like they're homophobic, but they're not going to say it. They're not going to say anything homophobic. You know what I mean?
yeah,
They're so like, oh, very we're very working poor, but still very prim and proper, which is kind of interesting. But
right. So your family doesn't do the
uh,
cousin walk before, huh?
you said the what?
The cousin walk. That's the meme
Right,
of
not
Thanksgiving.
necessarily.
So other than the debating the racist uncle, that's the meme now.
The cousin walk,
Do you know what
which
that
I do
is?
understand. The cousin walk.
Yeah.
Well, I think I get it, but if you're referencing something specific, I don't know. But I kind of get like it reminds me of family reunions where cousins who may not know each other or have seen each other, they have to spend time getting to know each other, I guess. But that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
What is there a meme that I'm
No, I'm
missing?
talking about smoking weed. It's such an open secret of a
Oh,
meme that it's like in the news now, where they're saying cannabis sales are highest right before Thanksgiving because everybody tells mom, "Oh, hey, me and the cousins are gonna go for a walk. We just want to
I
walk in the woods
guess I got it.
before we eat all this
Very true.
turkey."
Totally. Yes. That's very true. And my people call it the cousin walk. But yeah, my family can be a little prim and proper. So if you want to do anything, um, like smoking weed or whatever, yeah, it's like off the premises kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
I had a lot of cousins over this time. It was a good one this year.
oh, okay, cool, cool. And is your family mostly in Georgia?
Um, no, they're all over the place. We had people coming in.
Got it.
Yeah, but it's been fun talking with you about it. Okay, I've got one more topic for us. The food, man. What's your favorite Thanksgiving food?
Right. Yeah, and I love on Thanksgiving and um there's so many. Oh, I mentioned to you earlier sweet potato pie,
Yes.
and that is a fave.
Nice.
Greens. I think anything the foods that we might think of for Thanksgiving are foods that I just generally eat any time of the year. To be honest,
Yeah.
um, when ingredients are available.
You know,
But I love
I'm not usually big on the turkey, but I was a big fan this year. It was good.
that's very true. I'm not really a turkey person. I will say that I do love the idea of smothered turkey, though I don't cook it.
Hmm.
Part of my family's from Louisiana, where if you're from Louisiana, you know, we kind of smother everything,
Yeah,
make gravies with it.
and
So I appreciate a smothered turkey wing. Yeah.
I like the dressing. I like the chicken and rice,
Yes.
man. Chicken and rice is great. The green beans, those are some of my favorites.
Mm, yes. And I mentioned to you earlier about the kind of, I don't know, sort of competitive nature with like sweet potato pie versus pumpkin pie.
Sweet potato versus pumpkin,
As
yeah.
you mentioned, as you mentioned dressing, I immediately thought of how some people refer to it as stuffing
Oh yeah, dressing
too. You
versus stuff.
know,
Okay, I'll put it. Uh, I would put it like this: dressing versus stuffing is like the Coke versus soda versus pop of Thanksgiving.
right?
and
But of
and
course, it's making me think of. Go ahead.
and pumpkin versus sweet potato pie is the Coke versus Pepsi.
And of course, it's making me think of kind of underpinning class and racial um, uh, ideologies that might um, determine what foods we eat over the holiday. You know,
I think that if the green bean casserole is your favorite, that means that you're a fascist. I'm just kidding.
but yeah,
I'm just kidding. Yeah. So,
yeah, I grew up
so your
eating.
position
I
on,
grew before.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I'm asking you on sweet potato versus pumpkin because I know mine.
Oh,
Which side are you on?
oh, I think just sweet potato. I grew up eating sweet potato. My mom made when she was alive. She made sweet potato pies. I didn't
Hmm.
even know pumpkin pie was a thing. I think until I must have been like a teenager in high school. Like I had never even encountered a pumpkin pie.
You know,
It's shocking.
I wanted to disagree so we could go back and forth, but I gotta agree with you. Sweet potato is pretty good. When I was a little
But
kid, I would
some
eat so much sweet potato. My parents would tell me that my nose turned orange.
and some people would argue that they taste very similar because of just the ingredients that get added. They're very common ingredients, you know, nutmeg and
Yeah,
cinnamon, you know.
yeah.
Um, I I have not had sweet potato often enough to just know what I think I probably had it once and I can't even remember when that was. But yeah, I love me a sweet potato and I love there are different, you know, certain people have different techniques, you know. I mean, I've had sweet potato pies where the top layer is like sticky and crunchy, you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's
And
definitely a range
what
of qualities that are sold, and I feel like the range is more with sweet potato, where maybe you're kind of more likely to be able to get a really good scratch sweet potato pie compared to pumpkin.
now do you think it's because in this country we grow more sweet potatoes than
I just think
pumpkins? Like
I just think there's so much heavily processed pumpkin pie filler out there that like that is used more often for pies, you know,
hmm,
compared to sweet potato. I think I may be wrong about this, but it seems like you have more fresh sweet potatoes being put into pies.
for sure. Hmm. Yeah. I have though had sweet potato pies that I could where I could taste that it was made with canned sweet potatoes.
Yeah,
You know that very canny taste. Yeah,
yeah,
um, yeah. But I'm just and of course when I think about pumpkin pie, I think of mostly about white people eating pumpkin pie. I don't really, though I'm sure there are you know non-white people, people of color who love a pumpkin pie. In my own lived experience, it has not been like a fave, you know, a favorite dish.
right. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely imagine how annoying it must be to, you know, like know that your people's land was stolen, and imagine a bunch of white people like feasting and talking about how grateful they are for that land that is stolen, you know?
Um, oh
Um,
my goodness. Right.
but at the same
Yeah.
time, at the feast, like, you know, you don't want to crash the feast and be like, we should all be sad instead.
Hmm. And that's probably one thing that we should do. Like, how about we sit in some sadness, you know?
Yeah, I think
Like,
it's like
what is,
we should though. It's yeah, we have to do it with grace. I guess
yeah.
that's where I'll leave it. And but we can't let grace become you know, tone policing where we don't speak our mind, you know, and amplify indigenous voices about this issue.
Right. Can you repeat um, the indigenous celebration that's happening in Little Five Points? Can you repeat that? I know you mentioned it briefly earlier.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'll just kind of run down a few things we have coming up, and
Oh,
we
nice.
can close the
Nice.
broadcast after that, I think.
Right.
Thank you so much for being
And can-
my first guest on this iteration of Mosaic Live.
I'm so thank you for doing the work. You've been really busy today. I've kind of
Thank
noticed
you.
online and on you've been like busy, busy, busy. And I
Thank
also
you.
just want to name that for folks who don't know, we are on Muskogee Creek lands. For those of us in the Metro Atlanta area, North Georgia, um, maybe going into Oklahoma, right? And I feel like that doesn't get named enough. I know, Brad, you were talking about earlier, kind of what you were learning in school, what you learned a bit in school, and I do not remember when I was in middle school and high school here in Georgia. I don't remember Muskogee being mentioned at all. You know,
Yeah,
which
that's
is, says a
really a
lot.
shame. You know, I do think I remember hearing it in school, but there is so much of Muskogee history that I've only had to learn
Um,
through, you know, looking it up outside of school. And I think it's obvious to me that, you know, the reason for that is to kind of ignore like that history is in a large part a history of resistance to colonialism, right? What I did
right,
hear in school was the Trail of Tears. And so
right,
that's obviously an important thing to learn about. But why do we leave out everything where indigenous people were doing things of their own agency and only end with like what they were forced to do by the government? It's like the government does all these big important things, but history sort of tells it like the government is the only one doing anything.
right, right. You know, to show itself as this benevolent source of power,
Yeah,
right?
I definitely never heard about Minawa, the great Muskogee warrior who executed the traitor and slaveholder who sold off the Muskogee lands to Georgia. The first time he
Hmm.
sold Muskogee lands, the council met and said, okay, if anyone does that again, death penalty. He did it again, and
Hmm.
Minowa led a band of warriors to go and kill him and burn down his plantation. We never learn about
Hmm.
that. You know, we never learn about Billy Bowlegs, uh, also known as Osceola, who led the Seminole resistance for years until the government lured him into an ambush and imprisoned him through um, what's the word? Not perjury. Oh, help me out. Um,
It's going to come
perfidy,
to you.
perfidy. It was
Perfidy.
a perfidious capture of Billy Bowlegs where they were under a flag of truce and they betrayed that flag of truce, and it's known as one of the most disgraceful moments in U.S. military history. It's the only way that government was able to bring down the Seminole resistance. So, just want to mention, um, those people should be taught in our schools as American heroes.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Anyway,
Hmm.
um, yes, coming up, we've been very busy. We have a rally for Hands Off Venezuela coming up. I'm not gonna provide the details here, but follow our Instagram at ATL Mosaic, and we will be posting that when it's ready. Um, we've got, like I said, the political education meeting Sunday, December 14th at 3 p.m. to discuss the Declarations of the Lacandon Jungle, a manifesto of an indigenous rebel movement in Mexico. Um, and the first Voices Festival is gonna happen on I think, let me get this right, November November 28th, 21st. I think it's the entire week of November 21st to 28th.
So that has just passed. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking I felt like it had just passed.
Oh yeah, okay, so
You're saying
that's,
it's in.
yeah, sorry, I was thinking December. Okay, that was like this week. Yeah, so that's not happening any longer. Sorry about that.
No, and I intended to go, but I have hopefully next year to go to that. Okay.
Yeah. And the other upcoming event we want to shout out is tomorrow, um, at noon. People are meeting at City Hall to demand justice for B. Green, a man who was shot by Atlanta police recently.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Um, so thank you for coming. Thank you all our viewers. Um, check out those upcoming events. Check out our Instagram for the Hands Off Venezuela rally and Polyed December 14th. Um, let's do this. Let's bring down colonialism.
For sure. Yes, and I'll try and be at the courthouse tomorrow.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to get more comrades down there, and um yeah, it's been a good broadcast, dude. Happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays.
Same to you. All right.